thank you all for coming. Make sure you're in the right talk, because we didn't expect this many people. So, anybody that was here for CSO Indy's talk, I'm going to try to prime your system 1. I was going to throw this in the audience, but liability is probably bad. So anybody that wants a drink, come on up. All right. Yeah, I did this 2 years ago. Nobody drank with me, and I was drunk by the end of my talk, so. Drink after the talk. All right, we have to do the quick disclaimer. Doesn't represent our employers, blah, blah, blah. Only a few skitties were harmed in the creation of this
This is
talk.
Dennis. I'm Matt.
I'm Dennis. He's Matt. This talk is about bringing together indicators of compromise for assessing an enterprise. And what we're going to cover first is we're going to cover kind of the problem, where we are, some disparate things, some current things that are happening, and their issues. Everybody knows that AV is a failure. A lot of people have done a lot of work in terms of bypassing antivirus. The fail guys have done a lot of work of stealing that work to present it at various conferences on how to bypass AV. They've done an excellent job at stealing. It's awesome. It's right. And it's not completely dead, doesn't work. Everybody knows, it doesn't detect artifacts. It doesn't detect other things. It almost always deals with binaries and only binaries. And, again, is easily bypassed. This is some of the things I just said. It's behavior, heuristics don't always work. It's really hard, blah, 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 blah. Then switch gears. It's going to seem a little bit disjointed at first, because we're going to cover these things that seem not to be related, and then we'll bring it all together. OpenIOC is from Mandiant. It is a standard that they put together. It's an XML standard that represents indicators of compromise. Indicators of compromise are just what they say. They are the artifacts that are left by a compromise. And those things can be registry entries. They can be window handles. They can be anything that is associated. They can be behavior related. They can be binary related. So it's kind of all over the map. And Mandiant created OpenIOC out of, and I may have some of the facts wrong, but I believe I understand how they came about. Internally, they used this XML standard for incident response. It was a manual thing. They'd be doing manual incident response. And they would catalog the indicators as they were doing the incident response, cataloging the indicators, and they were keeping them codified within these XML documents. And they created a schema from that they used internally. And what they thought was, hey, this has been really useful for us internally. Why don't we publish this as an open standard, which they called OpenIOC. And if you go to openioc.org, you can check out the actual standard. They've produced 500 different indicators that fit within the schema. And it's actually really useful for codifying and quantifying the indicators of a compromise.
It's also really handy to use to share threat intelligence amongst organizations or groups.
Right, because it is an open standard, so it's accessible to everyone. And it's also extensible, which we'll talk about later, so you can go ahead and extend the schema as well. I forgot all the more slides.
Wow.
Yeah, look.
Yeah,
it's real viability for sharing.
Well,
but
the other thing that comes from that is, since it is an open standard and it is just XML, we can write anything we want to consume that, search for that, or generate more. So just the fact that it is, we're looking to see, we really want to see like some kind of standard in this, because I'm tired of getting PDF documents that describe some kind of compromise and then not being able to do anything with it, except go through and manually now create some way that I can have machines in my network consume this information.
And the vast majority of the way threat intelligence is shared right now is via proprietary things and or commercial. So you have to pay for it, and it's a closed system. So something like OpenIOC it's viable as a sharing mechanism. It's very fluid. It's very easily used and consumed.
But nobody's doing it.
No one's doing it. That's kind of where we landed, was nobody's using it. Nobody cares. Mandiant isn't even doing it. And that's not a slam on Mandiant. Mandiant is basically saying, look, here we put this out there, community, take it over. And nobody's done anything with it, and it's just kind of sitting there. And it's, in our eyes, it was kind of this gem for all the reasons we've already stated. And as well, Mandiant's made some free tools available, which are actually pretty good. There's something called IOC Finder, which will catalog an entire machine looking for indicators of compromise using these OpenIOC XML documents to try to register whether those indicators have been found. There's IOC Editor, and we'll cover some of these later too. IOC Editor allows you to create these XML documents in an easy UI form, and you can also open them and look at them and stuff like that.
They use Redline. They use
Redline.
the MER, the incident response tool.
Yeah, so they have but the part of the problem with these is because this evolved out of a manual incident response practice and process. All of these tools are monolithic. They're not manual, or they're very manual rather. And the only ones they make available are Windows only. So you have to go and you have to actually install an executable on a Windows machine and then do this whole thing manually. So it doesn't scale by any stretch. It's useful within the context of that for manual incident response, but none of it scales. Now this other thing, another non sequitur, honeypots. I love these things.
I can see none of this fits together.
Yeah, none of it fits together. It's like we're jumping around, and there's a reason for that. Most of the time within our community, as far as I'm aware, they're kind of novelties. They're cool. They're for collecting stuff, and then you see the blog posts of people publishing their stats on their honeypots, and what countries came from where, and blah 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 blah, and that sort of thing. But they're actually really underutilized sources of threat intelligence. If you think about it, if you strategically place your honeypots, whether it be upon your perimeter, for most people and most organizations, there's never been a reason to have honeypots on your perimeter, right? Because they're going to get popped. They're going to get activity, so why bother? It's just going to be a meaningless chatter. Whereas there's been reason to put honeypots internally because they shouldn't get near. They actually are underutilized in terms of threat intelligence collection on the perimeter because you can see what's actually possibly hitting your IP space. And depending, again, strategically where you place them, they actually can be good gatherers of threat intelligence. We're caring most about client-side and low interaction stuff, and again, we'll touch on some of this later. And then here's another one, malware analysis, okay? So now again, we're going to tie all this together. So the malware analysis, automated malware analysis products, if you will, most of them are online services. Again, we named some of them here, Anubis, Komodo, so on and so forth. And they don't scale. You generally, if they have a throttle, so they have a rate limit, how much you can actually give to them, and then you generally have to wait quite a bit of time for your results and stuff like that. So it's really kind of hard to collect a bunch of malware in an automated way, throw it at it, get the results, and so on and so forth. You can use local solutions. Anybody here heard of ZeroLine? ZeroLine is and I'll talk about ZeroLine a little bit later, but ZeroLine is actually pretty cool. It is essentially, it's a QEMU VM that runs malware with Wine. It's a QEMU VMware, or VM image rather, of Linux that runs malware in Wine and then extracts artifacts in a reporting fashion for analysis. And it's actually kind of cool. It has some limitations. We actually started to use that for some of the stuff that we've done, but I'll talk about the limitations on that. Cuckoo is awesome. Cuckoo is really, really cool, and they're going to have some better stuff coming out in 1.0. I forget what all the changes are going to be, but there's going to be some really cool stuff coming out in 1.0. We're using 0.6, and that's really the one that works for our purposes here.
And one thing to note is with almost all of these services, they're made for human consumption,
right,
and not some kind of machine to consume it. So it's, once again, you have to throw more people at it. And we don't want to throw people at anything. People don't scale.
Yeah, so. The same thing with the mandate tools. We're dealing with an issue of scale. All right, so here's our problem. And I don't normally read the slides, but I'm going to go ahead and read this. We have a way to communicate threat intelligence in an open, easily consumed way, and that's the OpenIOC, right? We have a way to analyze those using malware analysis tools that will automatically analyze them. And we have the honeypot's a way to collect. So we have all these things. We can collect, we can analyze, and we can share. And none of them work together, right? They're even when I touched on the different topics, it seemed like I was jumping around. It was completely disjointed because people don't associate them working together. They're islands, and nobody's doing anything. So we're trying to solve that with what we have here. So we've come up with Iocaware, and it brings all of those components together to help create a scalable, automated way to collect indicators of compromise, create the codified documents, manage them, and then test in enterprise. We say near real time, and it sounds kind of fluffy as a marketing term sort of thing. It kind of is near real time, but it kind of depends on how you have things set up. We will auto generate the IOC documents with one piece. We have central IOC collection management and maintenance, and then there's a Ruby-based agent that will work multi-platform, not just Windows-based, that is lightweight and can be spread across different platforms across the enterprise. All right. So now we're going to go start talking about the components of how this all comes together. This is just an information flow. It's not an official network diagram, as you may be able to tell. So essentially, on the left, what you have is you have relic the attacker, and they're hitting the honeypots, and that will automatically come in and get sucked in by the IOC generation piece that will take these binaries in, but not just binaries, and I'll talk a bit more about that probably on the next slide. So it takes this stuff in, it will automatically analyze behavior and the binaries and stuff, create the IOCs automatically. It funnels that to the centralized control panel piece that can manage and maintain all of these IOCs. And then each one of these pieces is kind of separate. So this piece where you can create the IOCs is self-contained. So you can just run that. You can just use it to create IOCs. Then the control panel piece can actually consume IOCs from other places. They can be manually done. There might be other sharing places and that sort of thing where you can consume them and bring them in. I know Mandiant has a blog where they're kind of publishing IOCs, and you can kind of bring them in from there as well. And then there's the agent piece that goes out to the enterprise and talks back to the control.
And these honeypots don't actually, we touched on them before, but they don't have to be like low interaction. They could be client-side stuff or client ones that, let's say you have something that you think is malicious that you can just go ahead and throw like bug at it, get an IOC, make sure it hasn't touched anywhere else.
All right, so what it is and isn't. This is not a replacement for incident responders or SOC engineers or anybody like that, operations folks, anything like that. It's to help them scale. That really is the primary purpose of this. You've got an enterprise of hundreds or thousands of machines. You've got 2 to 5 people working the network. You need a way, in the way that SIM is supposed to, correlate events to have you focus on what is interesting. This is kind of the same purpose. It helps target what compromise indicators have popped up to kind of flag what should be looked at for further investigation. And it gathers, it codifies the threat intelligence, but it's not AV. It's not that. It has nothing to do with that. And it marks things of interest. It doesn't replace actual common sense and manual investigation. It just tries to help corral that which should be investigated.
Just think of it as like helping prioritize your engineers on where they need to go.
Right. All right, so the first piece, so now we're going to talk about the individual pieces. So the IOC generation piece, and I have to read some of this because we kind of did this last minute, so everyone does slides last minute, right? What we're using right now in what I've created for what we've created for the IOC generation piece is we're using Kippa, which is an SNH honeypot, and then Dionea, which is a low interaction honeypot. But you can actually, it's not tied into whatever honeypots you're using. All you need is a place where you're going to have things that need to be analyzed. So whatever you're using or whatever you can put together to collect things that need to be analyzed, this can then consume it. So what we're going to end up releasing is kind of either a VMware image or an ISO or something like that of a Linux distro that will be set up with Kippa and Dionea, and right now that's all we have on it. So that's what we're coming out of the box with, and then you can add whatever you want to it. And it takes the malware as it comes in to the honeypot. You can just monitor directories, suck in the malware. It will automatically throw it into Cuckoo for analysis, and then recreate the IOCs from that.
This also means you can do manual stuff. So if you have like forensics guys doing stuff or you find some malware, you can just throw it into the system, get an IOC.
Yeah, and while I've been developing this, actually some of the fail guys, while they're working on their anti-malware or their anti-AV stuff, what they would do is they would actually send me some of their binaries to run through my stuff to figure out what indicators were coming back, which was kind of an interesting thing because I could see as they were developing what we would detect. They can be collected at the perimeter. as they occur. So this is the quote-unquote near real time, and again, I kind of hate that, but I'm not quite sure how else to describe it. Now, the interesting is Dionea, and to be sure, this talk is not about cuckoo. I'm gonna run cuckoo in a little bit, but it's not about cuckoo. It's not about honeypots, but there is some knowledge that was gained out of obviously putting this stuff together of those things. So I might be able to answer some questions, but I don't know those products. But one thing that Dionea does is it collects what are called bystreams, which are essentially the attacks. Whether there was a binary involved or not, if anybody just comes and starts knocking on a port or does something else, Dionea collects all of that in what's called bystreams. And the purpose within Dionea of doing that is so that you can replay the attacks. So you might want to try it on a different box or something like that. But what it means for this is, and I haven't gotten the coding done for it yet, and there's some issues with deciding what is relevant, but essentially what we can do is we can go and analyze those bystreams for behavior. So as we were saying before, one of the limitations on AV is it's pretty much always binary based, right? So the bystreams actually give us some actual just behavior, whether there was binary involved or not, that then we can extract indicators from, create an IOC document. Now we can test to see if there's any artifacts on the enterprise from that behavior, not just from a piece of malware or a binary. We've extended, we only have a few terms in there right now. We've extended the schema, the terms for the schema with OpenIOC, and we've actually published that on GitHub. Matt will tell you about that. Some of the terms we've added are like SSD, and then MD5-4K, which I want to just quick say about that. MD5-4K is something many of you may not have heard of. Chris Hoodle, who is the CISO of SPX, is doing his doctoral work on MD5-4K, which is essentially the MD5 is the first 4K of any file. And his research has kind of shown that you can assess, and I forget what the accuracy is, but it's something like 6.9 or 5.9 or something like that. You can assess the accuracy of the uniqueness of a file, but it's something like 7 times faster than running the full MD5. So what we've done is we've thrown in, for kind of future reference, if both of you gets adopted or if an organization or whoever wants to adopt it, we're collecting the MD5-4K as well, and we've added those IOC terms. So when we create the IOC documents from the malware that gets analyzed by Cuckoo, we're actually going and getting the MD5-4K as binary as well. Let's see, I have a zero-line VM that I created initially because that was actually my first hack was zero-line was easy to throw together. The limitations with zero-line are, it's an excellent, really, I mean, for someone putting that together and not requiring a Windows license, that's actually one of the biggest wins with zero-line is you don't require a Windows license to try to analyze malware. But what I found, and the reason why I didn't want to use it was, especially with the registry entries, it's really difficult to discern in the reporting the difference between what wine does versus what the malware does. And I can't remember the author's name, so I apologize. But he tries to do a good job of differentiating between the two, but what I would find is literally sometimes I would get some entries that were from wine, and other times I wouldn't get those entries from wine, and I couldn't tell the difference. And it really was just not, for what the purposes here are, it really wasn't going to be useful. So I went with Cuckoo because it's a lot more comprehensive at all of that analysis. But, yes? Pardon me? It wasn't consistent, though. And so I didn't know what all of them were. I started to go down that route. What I did was I analyzed a bunch of them in zero-line, and I started going through the results, and I was going to try to pull out, and it was overwhelming. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. So, but it still is, depending on your situation, it's a viable alternative, and I've kept that VM just, for people that might want to use it. So when we end up publishing this VM, obviously we'll have to pull out the image, the VirtualBox image for XP, and but everything else will be there, so you just have to stick in your own image. It's demo time.
Your demo.
Yeah. Now, the demo gods are who they are, so we'll see what happens. Boo resolution. Sorry, I forgot to start this one. I thought it was all set.
So while we're waiting on this guy, is there any questions at the beginning? So there's about 500 indicators. It could be filing, filing patches, like you got like it's signed or the certificate. Then there's stuff like is it registry key there that have this value. So there's so many indicators. You can do almost anything that something can do to a computer can describe, or OpenIoT can describe. So it's really flexible. It's really simple. If you find something that you're like, I want to be able to see this, right? And I'm not saying that the tools that you have available are going to be able to handle that yet, but if you can add it if you're writing your own tools or anything like that. The question was, what's to stop a AV vendor from basically doing the same thing? It's not going to be in their core, like, this is what we do. I mean, so we're not going to, like, this tool is not going to stop anything.
Yeah, it's not meant to stop anything. Again, it's simply to help those folks scale, to know what to look at, because something is worthy of being looked at.
I mean, we're going into the game saying, you're owned, we know you're owned, and it's okay. Now let's fix it.
So what I've done is I've went ahead and I'm starting analysis on a piece of malware that I pulled down from VirusShare. And it takes some time. I picked this one because it's got some good indicators on it. But what I'm going to do is, while Cuckoo is analyzing this piece of malware, I'm going to go through.
Keep going.
Well, it's not mirrored. I thought
No,
it was,
it's not.
It's not. But now I can't do anything.
You can't see it.
But now I can't do anything with it. This is why we mirrored. But no, they had issues with the resolution when all right. But then I can't interact with it on my screen. Computers are hard.
Computers are hard.
That's why I don't do them for a living.
It's not mine, so yes.
All right. Well, if I mirror it, that's going to screw everything up, right? Well, no. You know what? Actually, it won't because we're not in presentation mode, so it should be okay. We're not in presentation mode. All right. Thank you for coming. It's just like old times. All right. Get that back up there.
He hasn't used that word yet.
What did I not use?
Mental masturbation.
I haven't used mental masturbation. There, I just used it.
All right.
So back here. So anyway, what I did was I went ahead and submitted that, and it's all right. Anyway, basically what this ends up being, this piece is right now it's not something I'm going to submit to the Cuckoo project because I have to clean a bunch of crap up. I had to modify some of the Cuckoo code very, very minimally, but the fact that I did still made it so it's not ready for prime time in terms of being a Cuckoo reporting module. But I started writing a completely separate Python piece to do all of this. And with the way Cuckoo works in terms of events and being notified, blah, 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 it was just much easier to just throw it and have it be a reporting module within Cuckoo. So it's a Python script that is now a Cuckoo reporting module, and I'll try to work on getting it to be submitted to the Cuckoo project at some point, but it still works regardless. At the top here, what you have is just some things that you can modify. For instance, there's the location of where the IOCs will be dropped. Because there's so much noise, and Cuckoo will pull out things like all imports, all exports. Within the context of an indicator of compromise, you don't want all of that. That's going to be noise. If you're getting an indicator and you're looking for an alert on very generic imports, very generic information, then everything's going to alert across your enterprise, right? So that you want to limit the noise. So some of the things in here are like where are listing suspicious imports. So I only want to have an indicator created within the XML document if on the import section, on the PE import section, if these calls are made. And you can obviously add more. Good PE sections. So here's a list of sections that if you see these sections, don't put an indicator. So I want to kind of look at non-standard PE sections. And then another thing that'll come through is like the entropy of those sections and stuff. And then in addition, there's Cuckoo will do network analysis as well, and I pull that stuff out. And what I don't want to do is there's a lot of chatter between like broadcast and the local host and stuff like that, so I want to exclude that stuff. As well, there's pulling strings. Right now I just have a couple of regexes in there for pulling emails, and it's not the greatest regex either. And then pulling IPs. So what it'll do is when the string analysis on the malware that Cuckoo does, I'll then take that and look for emails and IPs. And it's really easy just to add another regex and have it look for that. So it's fairly extensible in that regard as well. So now our analysis is done, and what we have is and then this is just something like this is just an example of what you can do to monitor. If you look right here, it says the Dionaid binaries directory. So monitor that directory using the notify wait, and when anything comes in, submit it to Cuckoo. So that's how you would do. You kind of cobble this together to script it to say when my honeypot has a binary, submit it to Cuckoo, and then Cuckoo will take care of the rest with the reporting module. So then what we have is this is the IOC that was generated from that piece of malware. And I'll show it in a more usable format. I just want to show this real quick. What you have at first at the top is you have metadata. So you have the file name, you have the size, and so on and so forth, the MD5, the MD5-4K, and that sort of thing. And then you come down and you get imported functions. And again, the imports, it's only going to pull the suspicious ones. So if it wasn't on that list that I showed you, then it won't pull them in. And this one actually has a ton of information. There's certain strings, like here's a thought. You know, that's not necessarily going to, it isn't suspicious in and of itself, but with the other indicators, it now becomes something of merit. And then these are files that are dropped. Right now, what I'm not doing, I could, but it just seems a little bit overwhelming at this point. I could go and then do an analysis on the drop files as well. Right now, I'm not doing that. I'm just relying on the initial analysis. So anyway, there's the document, and then kind of a better way to look at it is awesome. Oh, that was
that's awesome.
You know what? Deal. That's what I say. All right, there we go. That's better. So essentially, what this is prior to this talk, I ran my VMs to me. What I did was I ran about 900 plus pieces of malware from VirusShare through the analysis engine and had it just spit out the IOCs. And then what I did was I brought that into Mandiant's IOC editor, and now my seizing because it doesn't have enough RAM because it's Windows. It only has 12 gigs of RAM. At least the demo gods are crapping on us now. So.
It's not the demo gods. It's actually just you.
That's right. It's just me. So this is what it looks like within the IOC editor. So these are all automatically generated documents that are following the OpenIOC compliant standard that will be able to be consumed by the editor from Mandiant. This is what it looks like in Mandiant's editor. I just wanted to show what that looked like real quick. And it's very manual. So I can go in and modify all this stuff, and I can create this stuff. So the automated part of these things being created is really, really useful.
And the interesting part is then if you do want to use the Mandiant tools, but just the generation, you can, because they'll be compliant, fully compliant.
Right. So now I'm going to go back to non-mirrored mode. All right, so now Matt's going to take over from here, but who can tell me what this symbol is? control symbol from Get Smart. Nobody knows that. Great.
So one of the things is, once you have all this data, what do you do with it? So one of the things we looked at is we said, well, we need to find a way that somebody can actively use this in an easy way, so that they're not like running around with their heads on fire and like going to each box, popping in a USB drive, and keep going, just trying to get around. Also, because I don't have enough people to do that. I don't think anybody does. So we made the control panel, which will basically facilitate the use of inputting an IOC, pulling an IOC from any source. Basically, we're saying we'll consume any RSS feed that has an IOC in it, and we'll just drop it into your stuff. That way, anybody can publish it. If you have a thread intel agreement with somebody else, then as long as they'll publish it in like an RSS somehow privately, whatever, then you can consume it and pull it in. You can then look across all the IOCs that you have if you're looking for specific indicators. You can manage the agents that you have to install. It is an agent. It sucks, but it's an agent. It's about the only way we can search across the enterprise quickly. And then use it to set up jobs and scan your whole enterprise. It's exactly what it says it is. It's a control panel. So then we have the agent. We did write it in Ruby, which means we're not going to be able to do some of the things that you would be able to do if you wrote it in C or something like that. But that's okay. We don't care. We're not trying to do forensically safe anything. We're not necessarily trying to dive into memory. We did just want it lightweight, and we wanted to be able to write the code once and run it on everything, and we didn't want to use Java. Does then talk back to the control panel. There's a bunch of settings you can do. One of the things we did also want with the agent is to be able to install it through your normal channels, so like SCCM, Asper, anything you're using for installation management in your enterprise, so that it's really easy to use. We're going to quickly just install the agent, show the control panel. By the way, don't laugh. I'm not a UI designer, and 2 weeks ago I deleted all the code and started over.
Yeah, he sent me an email and he said, I know it's the 11th hour, but I'm rewriting everything from scratch. Hope that's okay. But he's mad, so you're wrong.
No, it's bad. So, we have, this is what basically our control panel looks like, which you can't see all of it. We have quick stats like agents running, agents connected. We can quickly paste an indicator into there. If you got it from somewhere else and you just want to manually do it, just dump it in there.
And this is all kind of alpha, so we're going to get where be able to stuff in IOCs instead of having to paste some stuff.
So anyway, while this is reloading, because I dumbly hit the refresh button to make sure that everything was working, it shows some quick stats about your environment, like how many agents you have running what environments, which of course right now we have absolutely nothing running, so it's really hard, you don't see anything. So let's go ahead and install an agent. So basically, we're like, if you're using SCCM for the Windows side, you can just push this down, say this is the server I wanted to connect to. It's going to go get all its other settings.
Yeah, you'll be able to do it from the control panel itself. Right now, we're just doing it from the
but that way, what we didn't want is we didn't want to make it hard for anybody to deploy it. We got to have these settings. So it's quick MSI.
It's part of the scalability, and you have thousands of machines, and you put this stuff out.
It's much quicker on a non-VM.
Non-Windows 8 VM with more than 1.5 GB. Any questions?
Yeah, while we're waiting.
Yeah. How do you follow what we're doing? You give us a lot of money. Yeah, we have been blogging about it on Twitter. You can just Dennis Who's Matt Door, those are our Twitter handles. Anytime, we're fairly responsive there. Yeah, and part of what we're gonna cover is where we're gonna be with this in terms of getting some of this stuff out to the public. And so there will be more publications, if you will, coming forth as soon as we can actually we do have day jobs and try to get this stuff all written. And we're not iron geeks, so we can't we have no idea how he works. But yeah, so you can just ask any questions, and we'll probably do some blog posts at some point. Right now, it's just been heads down, getting ready to have something here.
So we're still waiting on the install to finish, but I'm not going to use that control panel or in the Windows VM. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, there is. The number of computers in your enterprise. Yes. No. So the agent, you install it once, and it's going to run continually in the background as a service. But it's very minimal footprint. It's going to constantly be, not constantly, but it's going to check in at whatever interval you set to check to see if it has any jobs to do. Eventually, one of the things that I want to do is actually make it a peer-to-peer system so that we don't have to have a central communications up, that jobs can be passed. But that's a long way down the roadmap. Clearly, the demo gods are biting us right now. This actually really only takes a couple seconds. Is what? I'm not sure. We haven't played anything with it. It would be compatible with the IOCs, but I haven't really played a lot with the mirror agents, so I'm not sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's all completely
Probably not that many.
And that's part of the problem.
Part of the problem with the Mandiant's IOC, OpenIOC, is the documentation doesn't exist.
Yeah, they've published, if you go to openIOC.org, they've published the standard, the schema, and the terms, and then they give you examples of stuff, and then they give you the IOC editor to create them, and it creates the XML file on the back end, and that's it. And there's not a lot of documentation. And again, the concept of creating a bunch of these is just doesn't work. So that's one. Other than what? Well, it's yes and no, in the sense that I'd have to know what they are. Cuckoo was the easiest avenue to get this stuff, but the way the Python script is written, there is, and I need to like refactor all of it. I'm a manager, or I was a manager for a while. I had my coding skills years ago, so I need to refactor it all. But what I've done is there's a whole section of Python code for creating IOCs, and I need to split that out and separate it from what is doing the parsing of the cuckoo results. So the Python code is there and separated, at least from a function standpoint, within the code. So that's easily can be brought out to automatically generate IOCs from other inputs. So yes, that's the short answer. And that's okay.
So I'm going to try to see.
Work with any, I saw
it does do a key exchange, and all communications are then signed. And then, of course, we didn't do it over SSL, but you should do it over SSL. It does do cert validation to make sure that the cert's good. So we're trying to think about that kind of stuff. But we're human, and our goal right now is to ship code.
Right. Anybody else? I have not seen that. I haven't scoured. Yeah, I didn't go looking for extensions of the terms, so I don't know if anybody has done that. But within the looking that I've done within the context of the OpenIOC schema, I did not see any extensions. As a matter of fact, I wasn't sure what to do to extend it, but within the IOC editor, there's a way to extend it. It actually will format it all for you and everything. But I haven't seen a lot of people extend it. Again, part of this whole thing is nobody's using this stuff. And the community isn't using it, and it's not. There's nothing to facilitate its use. So why are IOCs not? Because nobody's using was the most comprehensive in terms of the usability of itself.
Go ahead. You had a question too, I think. By the way, I gave up on the demo.
Yeah. That's actually this slide. What we're going to be doing is and this is more of a funding thing than anything else, just because of the scale. But the idea is to have kind of a cloud solution where what I'm doing is I'm bringing down.
He
all
said
the cloud.
Yeah,
I said cloud. Okay.
Cyber APT cloud, done.
Oh, of course me.
So we are trying to come up with a way that people can submit malware and get an IOC so they don't have to have the generator. We're also looking for a way that we can allow people to share intelligence somewhat anonymously so that everybody else can benefit from it.
And also search cross IOCs. And we're looking at seeding it with the 12 million binaries from VirusShare, create IOCs from all of those, and have those be kind of the seed for the whole thing. But that's a much bigger endeavor in terms of time, investment, and all of that. But it's part of what we want to do.
And you're going to find all that eventually on iocaware.org.
Right. So. We don't.
But an IOC term, though, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So if we're saying that it dropped a legitimate tool, we want to know the existence of the malware and the legitimate tool. So that way we know that we can say, all right, an investigator needs to go look at this machine.
And that becomes the context of the IOC says this binary and this tool, this file that was dropped, even as a legitimate tool. Now we do look at them together within context. And that's the beauty of the IOCs and the standard is the context that it creates, and the fact that it's not being used is what's kind of out. And I love that. All right, so yeah, any more questions? Yeah.
It is on GitHub.
Yeah, part of it's on GitHub. The VM image for the creation is not on GitHub yet because I have a little bit more work to do, and I have to clean up the VM before I put it out there. Which website?
The website is also on GitHub. So if you just go find me on GitHub, and it's mjazor, you'll find the agent, the control panel. You won't find his stuff yet, but you'll also find what we did right to facilitate this is just a Ruby gem that just deals with IOCs so that anybody else can use that as well. It's going to include all the parsing, how to look for file items and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that stuff's out there.
This is going to be open source unless you want to pay me enough money to not open source it.
What do you mean me? Us.
Do what? Time frame is it's open now. You can use it. It sucks. And you can write more code to help it get it better since it's open source. Honestly, like the agent part and the control panel, I seriously scrapped everything 2 weeks ago, rewrote all of it.
And the IOC generation piece is for the most part done, but within the limitations, again, it uses cuckoo and so on and so forth. So once I get the VM hooked up and put out there, then that you can generate from there. You can just funnel it whatever binaries you want from there. And again, one of the biggest benefits has not been realized yet, and that's the analysis of behavior and not the binaries. And that's something that I'm still working on. That's going to a lot of problems with the analyzing of behavior is really the signal to noise ratio, and really kind of contextualizing and discerning something that is truly worthy of putting into an IOC to now go test 10,000 machines across your enterprise versus something, somebody's just not going to report something, and you don't care about it. Or you're testing a cross-site scripting vulnerability, and you don't care about that, and you don't want some stuff like that. So it really is that signal to noise ratio for the behavior stuff that is kind of.
So it is only a Windows agent right now.
Windows installation.
Windows installation. However, I have beta Mac, beta Linux, and I'm making sure that all that exists. That's why we chose Ruby, is because I can package Ruby for Windows and into a single executable, and it runs fine. and then it'll run on Mac, it'll run on Linux. So it's going to be all platforms. It does currently, but I'm working on making it so that even if there was a bug, you wouldn't be able to gain privileges through it. So, but the problem is, how do I look in Windows System 32 and get file information without having elevated privileges? There's privilege problems there that you have to overcome.
If you think even though this is not forensics, if you think about forensics tools and the kind of privilege they have to have with some of this stuff, that's kind of similar to what we're dealing with here. So there's that issue is.
And just for your record, I did find the first bug in it. There is a command injection. So right now it's reported as alert. So a couple slides back we were talking about future things that we want to do. Right now it's just recorded as an alert. You click on it, you see it gives you a little bit of information. It shows you what match. The other thing we're doing with IOCs is we're not saying it has to be 100% match. It may be fuzzy because malware changes. So it may say it's 90% of this IOC is matched. You may want to look at it and see why it's only 90%. So it'll come back as an alert. Part of the features that we want to do is basically be able to take that, right-click on it, and go give me data. Let it go to the agent, collect a lot of volatile data, and then you can shut the machine down. And start sort of the forensics, but it's in no way ever going to be forensically safe.
Yeah, that's not the purpose. Can you speak up?
The VM is for, if I understand your question, it was, what's the point of the VM if the agent scans locally? The VM is actually for the collection and generation of IOCs. The agent is for detecting them, like searching across your network.
So I've created a list of indicators from the VM. I'm now going to send that to the agent to look for those indicators across the network. That's the deception. I don't have any code for that. I actually started down that road. There's not really any reason why it wouldn't. That's just the submission piece. So with that, what I have chosen to do is monitoring a directory and send it to submit. There's no reason, because it's the reporting module, there's no reason the rest wouldn't work because the report would still happen. Yeah.
So
yeah, you're talking about from the malware analysis piece?
So it doesn't do it actively, like as in I'm going to always monitor network traffic, but one of the IOCs can be, I'm looking for this DNS name, so is this in your DNS cache?
Yeah, or the IP address.
Or is it in your ARC table?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I do want to do is when you right-click and say I want to look at more, one of those things is I want to say go ahead and gather me a network capture for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then bring me that back, because it may be important.
Huh?
So I'm starting down that road, but like I said, 2 weeks? No.
Yeah, that's part of what we're going to do. Thank you guys for
everything,
by the way.
Yeah.
And please hit us afterwards if you have more questions.